Okay, so great. We are live to Zoom. Welcome everybody. So if you look at your bottom, the little pop-up bar at the bottom where it's got participants and that number that we looked at earlier, you'll see that that's starting to creep up, which is very exciting. So welcome to everybody who's joining us on Zoom. Any second now, hopefully, if Audra has hit the button, we will appear to go streaming on. It will tell us anyway, that we'll be live streaming. We're going to be streaming on the BSC YouTube channel, the BSC Facebook channel, and this week, because we're working in association with a fabulous British Film Designers Guild, so it's going to their YouTube channel as well. So welcome everybody, welcome to the British Film Designers Guild. It's fantastic to have you. Sonia Klaus is joining us, who's the vice chair currently, is that right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome, Sonia. Dave Arrowsmith. Hello, Dave. Simon Rogers. Hello, Simon.
Hello.
And we've got with us Jake Polonsky, BSC. Hello. Got Mike Spragg, who can tell us where he is because he's very far away. And Florian Hoffmeister joins us. Thank you so much. Hey. Hello, everybody.
Budapest.
Welcome. Yes, Budapest. Wow. We are now live on our streaming service, so welcome to the world, which is very exciting. I wanted to get everybody here today, and I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us to talk about the DP and the production designers relationship. It's obviously production designers are the people who put our worlds together that we have the privilege to go and film, and so it's an enormous role that I enjoy working with anyway. I don't know about you, it might be awful, but it's obviously it's intrinsic to what we do, and I think that it's really, I think it's interesting to people to see how that works, and it works in different environments. And I think hopefully we've got enough of you here today that have done, and the projects that we can talk about that you've worked together on are kind of different enough. You know, there's episodic and there's kind of TV feature stuff and feature film. So it's kind of, and in terms of different periods as well. So it's really interesting, I think. So to kick off, really, I think speaking to Mike, you've worked with Dave before. You started working,
yes.
I believe it was series 2 of BBC's Musketeers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I did 2 episodes of the first series with a different designer, and then Dave came on season 2, and I think we did 4 episodes together. Dave, is that correct?
Yeah, 4.
We did the opening 2, and then the middle 2. So 2 different directors.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what I'm curious about that with Dave is you came in on a series that was up and running, and I think a lot of our relationships are based on that world building from scratch. You know, that's the best of it, is when you as a pair or as a threesome with the director, is that you get to you know, create the universe. How was that? What I'm interested in this case is you came in for series 2. How was that for you, Dave? Did you do anything on series 1? What was the handover like? And did Mike, you know, what was Mike's role in that?
Didn't do anything on season 1 at all. I got asked to come in I did season 2 and season 3. So I came in cold on, if you like, on season 2. But one of the great things about it was that season 1, all the work that had been done effectively was sort of setting it up for the garrison and the world of the Musketeers. So by the time I came in, I had the opportunity to expand that world into the royal apartments and all the royal worlds. So Mike and I sort of worked together on that, which was a much richer, you know, more affluent and more beautiful looking spaces. So I think we had a good chance to start a new season with new sets. So yeah, it wasn't really like sort of taking over from someone and using their style. And obviously the style was set by costume, the style of the show by the producer. But we had quite a lot of flexibility to sort of walk in there and do our thing. You know, it was good.
How was that for you, Mike? I mean, it's kind of to narratively make progress, and then that reflect itself in the photography, but and in the universe. How was that for you? How different was it from series 1?
I mean, not hugely, because obviously you've got same cast. You know, I mean, Colin Ratton, who produced for us, was a really kind of a very go-to producer, and I think was open for changes for Dave to bring whatever he needed in, and obviously the BBC wanted to expand the series and develop things. And it's kind of working with everybody. I mean, we're talking today about the relationship between DPs and designers, but of course, you know, every department head, you know, and one of the key things in that show were the costumes, I mean, which were amazing. And I think, you know, it was an opportunity, I think, to expand on a very successful series. But I think Colin and each director that came in gave us an opportunity to basically bring something new all the time. I mean, the audience don't want to see the same stuff all the time. So, you know, they love their characters, you know, they love the storylines, but the more we can take them into the world of that, and I think like Dave is saying with the royal apartments and the castle, you know, all of that stuff really expands the universe and everybody gets to see a little bit more each episode. So I didn't feel like we were restricted in any way. And I think Colin gave us a great opportunity to really do what we wanted to do, you know, from my department.
It gave us a lot of scope, especially at the start of season 2, because we got to go straight into this massive ravine sequence, big stunts, and loads of, the explosions every single episode. You know, if you didn't have an explosion, it wasn't the Musketeers.
No.
Face and swashbuckle. And then one episode, which Mike and I worked together on, I think it was episode 4, was it? Our second block?
5 or 6, okay. Yeah, 5, 6. Whatever. Anyway, yeah.
That was, as most of you will know, you know, in those long-running series, you get what's called a precinct episode, where it's usually, you know, someone's stuck in a room because they want to sort of calm it down to bring it back up again in the series. And our precinct episode was hijacked and stuck in this church, which on paper we thought, oh, how are we going to do that? And then Mike and I came up with the idea with Andy Hay, the director, and Colin, doing this astro globe, which was way out there. I mean, it was nothing. It's crazy for a period drama. People pulling ropes and things.
It was a spectacular day.
Yeah, but it gave us a great opportunity, the two of us, to work on the lighting and the design together to create something that wouldn't have been boring.
I mean, basically, the Astro Globe was essentially kind of a camera obscura kind of device, or whatever. And just a phenomenal design that Dave did. But it was very much about the whole process of interactive, design lighting between the two of us about how the story gets told and how the process of the scene goes on, really. So it was a great opportunity for both of us, really.
And I'm sure we'll talk about it later as well, about, you know, with the other guys, about the challenges of period drama. You know, candles everywhere. So that creates its own challenges.
Well, I think that's clearly interesting. I think that the opportunity to go kind of crazy with a period is really good fun. I mean, Jake, the show that we were going to talk to you about was about Bandersnatch, which was, of course, was a period show. I think it was 1984. It was set, I think, wasn't it? Because I caught a date in there somewhere, somewhere on one of the avenues. I mean, obviously it's. I mean, and then Simon Florian's project is just yesterday, but it's fun. It kind of feels like you could go wild with that, even with that little bit of period shift.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's nice about Bandersnatch is there's a few timelines in it, so there is actually some present day stuff. You have to go through quite a lot of circuits of it to get to, and then there's also some archive stuff, which is the documentaries. And so there was a whole discussion about different formats and, you know, different textures. And David Slade, who was the director, was very keen that everything was true to the time as much as possible, except that we were using Alexa 65 for the 1984 section, but we were using 35mm for the flashbacks. There was 16mm for the documentaries that you see on the TV. There was some cheap video cameras for the the Tomorrow's World type show. So, you know, again, all those things give you those textures. I think you mentioned you want to talk a bit about that helped sell the design side. You know, you could, and what was nice was that unusually, in a way, the more extreme it was, the happier David was. You know, like sometimes you're looking at something and you're going, this is kind of, you know, some of the sort of movie flashback stuff had, you know, he wanted all these flares in it, and I was kind of looking through the eyepiece, and, you know, it's a while since I'd really shot on film, and, you know, you're sort of looking through going, even I can't see much here. Are you sure you're happy that we can see what's going on? Yeah, it's fine. So, yeah, he really just wanted to push it very far, and that's, you know, that's very exciting. But also, the other thing is that, you know, Bandersnatch is full of detail, and, you know, one of Kat's, who sadly couldn't join us today, so just to explain to everybody, Kat, who was the designer, did a fantastic job. Sadly, isn't well. Hopefully not coronavirus, but just couldn't be with us today. So Sonia is standing.
Get well, Kat.
Sonia didn't
Get well.
work on. Bandersnatch.
No.
But there's a huge amount of details people who've seen it will know. The reason being that that particular episode of Black Mirror is a very sort of personal autobiographical piece for Charlie Brooker, who created the show and wrote it. So, you know, everything had to be correct. I mean, down to the tiniest detail. So, you know, if you saw the font of Crash magazine from 1984, he would know that it changed in April, and that's not correct.
Right.
And that mattered to him, which, you know, which is fabulous. I mean, it's, you know, again, it's great to have somebody creatively in charge who really gives a shit to that level of detail. That, you know, I mean, to some people they'd be like, well, does it really matter? But like to him, it does, because that world he wants to see brought to life. He wants to see it perfectly brought to life as he remembers it. And, you know, Kat and the design team did an amazing job, because as the sort of madness grows in Stefan's bedroom and all the papers and drawings, and, you know, that all has to be hand done. I mean, you know, I managed to find this little drawing that accidentally found its way into my possession. And obviously I'll be returning it to Netflix any day now. But, you know, there was so much stuff being generated by the art department, just that you could see, you know, you could put the camera anywhere and find interesting, quirky little things. So there were, you know, lots of different elements to that.
That's the authenticity of it, and that makes it so. And also when you're building those complete sets, that you can look anywhere, I think is really amazing. I mean,
well, I think, you
what
know,
I said at the beginning, that the privilege of being given a world to then to populate and to look at is one of the things.
Well, I mean, you know, what was interesting is that, you know, often the decision that you're making, it's either been made before you've arrived, or you start being discussed when you get there, is, you know, can we find this? Can we build it? If we build it, what does it give us? If we, you know, and interestingly in Bandersnatch, both Stefan's house and Colin's flat are both location and studio, which was, again, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how that combination got arrived at finally, but it was obviously a combination of, you know, Colin's flat is in Trellick Tower and it's a very difficult location, but it's very unique. And obviously there's certain things that you can only get by being there. All those flats follow somewhat similar design, that there's a door upstairs and an upstairs level, and then stairs going down. So it's quite a natural break to build the downstairs as a set, and that's where the trip scene happens. And, you know, it was brilliant because there was a fairly small amount of work to do upstairs and quite a lot of complicated and intricate stuff to do downstairs. And just being able to have the space and the room, you know, it obviously makes the whole thing much easier. Likewise with the house, with Stefan's house, you know, you see the exterior a lot. It's a very unusual house somewhere near Watford. And we used the ground floor of the house, which was great and kind of reasonably large, but not huge. But the upstairs, they basically took the template of what was there and, you know, obviously just expanded it so that you could, you know, there were so many scenes. I mean, I dug out the old, this script, which was 165 pages long.
Oh, well, of course. Yeah, of course it would be.
In fact, there's 5.5 hours of content in Bandersnatch. There's, you know, generally people are watching it in between, I don't know, you know, 30 and 60 minutes. But, you know, as you mentioned earlier, there's maybe 7 versions of some parts of some scenes. So just being able to vary where you could put a camera and, you know, change little things, having a set where, you know, you can take the walls out and all that practical stuff just gave you a lot more variations than you'd have if you'd stuck with the location.
I mean, that's fairly a unique setup. I mean, we could talk about that all on its own, really. That's
yeah. I mean, it was brilliant, because I think what's sometimes difficult is to kind of sell the reality if you don't have the best link between the exterior and the interior. But what was great is that you could see people going from the real interior to the set, and I think in you know, in the viewer's head, that really just helps to sort of cement the reality. Yes. So, you know, so long as that is handled in a sort of sensible and coherent way, then I feel like the locations fitted together really, really nicely.
It only takes that little bit of convincer, doesn't it? That
Yeah,
little bit
I mean,
of something
it's literally 10 frames where you see, oh right, that's the top of the stairs, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, right, that totally makes sense.
Yeah,
and I mean, obviously, brilliant sets can do that, and can give you that, but it does require an awful lot of skill. And the thing is that because all the Black Mirrors are one-off. I mean, they're like films. They're not part of an ongoing series. It's an anthology series. So the brilliant thing is you have the chance to set something completely up, but also you don't have much time to do it, and then it's not going to get reused. Whereas some of the other pictures I showed you from Billions, which I've worked on over 5 years, the decisions that you make, they have ramifications that go on for literally years. And, you can be standing there 2 years later going, I did say that translight was too close, and it still looks too close. They asked how out of focus it should be, and it's a bit sharp.
Yeah. Simon, you did a lot of building. You and Florian worked on Official Secrets, which came out, was it last year, wasn't it? You did a lot of building on that, didn't you? So I mean, and that was kind of yesterday, wasn't it? I mean, the time frame was the early 2000s, so that's an opportunity to still. I mean, I think it still felt it was quite restrained, but it was a chance to not play with being too contemporary. So you had to, it had to be authentic. But then if it's too authentic, then it's a documentary, right? And then it's
And quite quickly, when we start looking at the research of the images from the time 2003, you realise actually, wow, it looks like a long time ago. The fashion changes and cars. Interiors, even the level of decoration is very different actually. So on the surface it seems like a difficult sort of period to begin to render, but in actual fact, once you sort of delve into the IKEA catalogues from those particular years, you kind of go, well, there's loads of references here. I mean, of course, also you're kind of representing a period of time that happens before the period in which the film takes place. So there's that accumulation of stuff that for example, the characters have had since they were much younger, stuff that they brought from home as they were children. We brought bits and pieces that Catrin would have had on her journey into the house through the set decoration. So that layering of period detail actually becomes very similar to any other sort of period filming. I mean, it is a little bit trickier in so far that you sort of you have to kind of wade through it a little bit, and also be a little bit more specific in the detail, like perhaps Charlie was sort of driving for, the kind of acuity in the actual detail, because people are going to recognize it because it is sort of, although it's a while ago, it's familiar.
It's a living memory, absolutely, isn't it? So you can't fudge it too much. But you're right, the period stuff, it can't be from 2004, because actually it was, like you said, everything was come up to that. So actually there should be stuff.
Yeah. And that's when I think period sets are decorated in that way, obviously, that have sort of grays across the across the years that precede when they actually happen are the ones that have the right sort of layer of layering and detailing. And it's great to work on shows where or films where that's required now, and increasingly productions expect that level of trouble. For example, building part of a set that they've shot on location, as they did on Bandersnatch, and similarly with us with our studio build for the interior of the house, which there are many ways we could have shot it in an actual house, although Gavin was very keen to give himself a bit of elbow room, which was great, and obviously give us a bit more control. And I'm always happier to build a set in a studio than shoot inside a house for 2 weeks. So that's great to have those opportunities given to you.
Obviously, your story is based on a true story as well. So you were using real locations. So was that the real GCHQ that you did the exteriors at?
No, that was actually the HMRC building in Shipley.
I know that building.
And
I know that address anyway.
And everybody signed in on the first recce on a different name. It was January as well, so I was very nervous. And in actual fact, they don't own that building, so we got permission from the landlord to own it. And when the HMRC found out we were going to be there, they were up in arms, and they banned all their employees from talking to us.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, I think what's interesting about that, our collaboration from the start was, to find what I find is the most, apart from all the technicalities, location work, what can you build, is how do you define the tone of a piece? And I think in our particular case, we spend a lot of time talking about how much of a spin would you want to give the story? You know, how much of an, you know, do you want to make it a spy film? Do you want to make a documentary? And Gavin, as a director, was always very adamant that we should be, in a way, as truthful as one can be. But then, because he's I think his trajectory in terms of making the film also as a form of entertainment, then also educates, stays, you know, would probably stay, say, a little bit lowbrow. So it's accessible. So he doesn't want to spin it too much into a very intellectual way. You know, so he wants it so that you can just go to the movies, enjoy yourself, and you can walk away and say, oh, I'm actually thinking about something. So we spend a lot of time trying, especially talk about GCHQ, is how much do you spin it? How much do you, you know, how much does the lighting in combination with the set design create like an exciting atmosphere? Or do you want to keep it rather real? You know, what is reality in that sense? And that was actually what I think kept us going for many weeks, just to try and find that sweet spot specifically.
Well, it's like we were saying, is that it's got to be heightened, because that's where you can put the drama into it, and that's where you can, you know, it has to be. It's that balance of authentic. Like I was going to ask you about the translation floor. I mean, how much of that was based in reality? And because I can imagine that's probably just an office space in reality, isn't it? But you've made it look quite high tech and spacey and beautiful. So it's that balance of, you know, are we putting drama into it? But obviously you don't want to make it look like a Star Trek film. But you want some of that drama and intrigue, but that's through design and lighting and all sorts of things.
Strangely, their current building, the new building that they're in, Catrin was actually in their older building. The new building is really whizzy, very spacey. And they were the first references that we found. So I started going down quite a kind of high-tech sort of, you know, flory fittings and circular discs and big walls of monitors. And actually it was getting very, very spacey. It was almost looking like one of Gavin's previous films, Ender's Game, which was like an out-and-out sci-fi. So weirdly, you know, the environment is quite heavily designed. Of course, there's the layer of kind of crap on top of that, with takeaway foods and dreadful toys and things, and pictures of their family and dogs. But so that takes it another way. But then I discovered that the original building had a much more sort of Cold War kind of aesthetic, which is also very, very designed. So it kind of gave us a little bit of latitude to, you know, at that moment, lean into the most kind of sort of cinematic kind of thrillery kind of vibe. I think it still felt like a sort of place, you know, it was darkened so they could see. There was, you know, the sort of mid-century modern types of light fittings that went with the original, you know, the building that we were in, the locations. There were a lot of cues that were coming out of the building, which was similarly a government building originally, which had a kind of weird sort of, it's like Ken Adam kind of vibe about it. You know, it was another designed space, but just from a different period. So that did allow us to have a little bit more cinematic sort of excess there, which was then counterposed against a much more sort of naturalistic and sort of you know, interior feel with the house, for example, which was much more straightforward in many ways. Although again, with that, you know, we talked a lot about color and how we were going to get light into it to really sort of represent her state of mind as it changes from optimism with this sort of new relationship into this moment of horror when she realizes what she's done and she really retreats from the world and is about to get thrown, you know, away in prison as far as she's concerned for treason. So, you know, even that domestic milieu became a device to express the, you know, the emotion of
absolutely
Catrin.
Yeah, very strong. Mike and Dave, you were using a lot of a lot of locations, right? I mean, how much building did you it was all shot in the Czech Republic, is that right?
Yeah, everything was in the Czech Republic. I mean, we had quite extensive sets, you know, which we touched on, that were there for season one, and then obviously Dave expanded upon later. But then a lot of location stuff. I think one of the biggest problems that we had was obviously a lot of these chateaus essentially were derelict or semi-derelict. And so constantly, you know, I would be on scouts with a director and you'd stand back and go, that's a fantastic view there. And Dave would be going, my God, no, you can't show that because the whole wall is falling down, you know. So, I mean, these are supposed to be, you know, at the height of you know, that period in France, the grandiose kind of buildings. And although we had the scale of the buildings, we didn't have, let's say, the detail of you know, the materials there, because it was most of them were crumbling. And where we did you know, the Astroglobe sequence. I mean, the building was semi-derelict, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, there was holes in the floor and ceiling and everything. But that's, I mean, that was the uniqueness of it in some aspects, because the spaces in the Czech Republic and outside Prague are fantastic. I mean, as Mike says, they're crumbly, but it gave us the opportunity to go in and with the incredible plasterers and painters from Barrandov in Prague, Barrandov Studios, we went in and basically replastered and redecorated virtually every single location. Put walls up, you know, they had sculptors coming and doing things, people painting murals. So the places were a lot better fixed up by the time we left than they were when we got there.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the key things is not just the relationship with DP and designer, but DP, designer and director, because if you have a director that you go in on a scout that can tell you which way you're going to look, and so you're going to say, okay, we're going to look that way and that way. So two sides, don't worry about dressing. Don't spend your money there. Concentrate your money here. So the more kind of, you know, prep time, the more director time that Dave and I, you know, the designers, DPs can have, the more you can focus where you spend your money, you know, and especially in the episodic television world, you know, it's limited. So it really is a question of, you know, the more information upfront you can get, the more you can do with your money, really. So
yeah, it became quite interesting as well, because I went on then and did season 3 as well. Like Mike and I did season 2, and we kind of done used a lot of locations in season 1. By the time we got to the end of season 2, we'd kind of run out. I know it sounds crazy, but we'd run out of those kind of period locations. So by the time season 3 came up, we ended up building more in season 3 than we did in 1 and 2. We built a whole Paris street, docks, river, slums, everything. Just to give us that variety, so we didn't keep going back and revisiting, because, you know, it's 32 episodes over the whole 3 seasons. So, but that was great for me, because it gave me the opportunity to do something new and get all the texture and everything in that I wanted to get.
Amazing that you were allowed to have so much impact on locations, because that does not happen in the UK. I mean, we've got to be so careful.
Yeah, it's not like filming in the UK. I mean, I wouldn't say there's less restrictions. They just more understanding. I think they haven't had as much filming in some of these places. I think now, since the Musketeers, I know that by the time we got to season 3, there's lots of locations that were just going, no, we've had enough now. We don't want people in here anymore. So a lot of those have gone. I mean, I spent the last 2.5 years now in Prague working, and lots of those locations that I've known from Musketeers you can't go back to, because they've worn them out, if you like. So yeah, they did let us do. I mean, that's why we went. That's why BBC chose Prague, really, for that.
That's one of the reasons we go all over the world, isn't it? So chasing what we're allowed to do.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I don't think you could have done that show in the UK. Oh, you could have done the show in the UK, but it would have cost 3 times as much money. Yeah.
But then this is something that you can all answer me, is that there's especially with the older period stuff, is that it has to look, even though if it's meant to be new at the time, like you were saying, it needs to be royal, it needs to be fancy, and it needs to be the utmost of expensive and luxury, you know, just the richness to it. It still has to look old, because otherwise it's not convincing. It looks like you've just made it, you know. It can't be too new. So I think that there's always that patina of it's got to look knackered, even though it wouldn't necessarily be knackered for real.
Not always.
But
depends what the prop is. Depends what the set
for
is.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
But there is that expectation. I think audience, I mean, Simon, you'll know this as well, is the audience expect something that's old to look old. Yeah. You're absolutely right in that respect. So there is definitely a patina in there.
Yeah, but it sort of jars, doesn't it? It sort of sets people. It's like it's like good VFX. They don't need to show a lot of it, but it's that little bit of convincer. Yeah. Just that little bit, just to and then you can move on.
I mean, that was one of the challenges we had on Musketeers, particularly because Phoebe's costumes, I don't know if you remember, her costumes were quite extraordinary. They kind of went away from the original design of the historical design of the costumes. And I wouldn't say they were steampunk, but they were definitely punked up. I mean, they were beautiful leather costumes, but predominantly quite dark. So, and also it then meant with Mike and myself, we were looking at that and thinking, well, we have to kind of lighten up the backgrounds quite considerably here, because we're just going to lose everybody, because we just had candles and light coming through the windows. So that kind of dictated a lot of our location choices and our paint choices and furnitures and fixtures, you know.
Yeah, so you start playing a lot more silhouettes in a sense, really, because the darkness of the costumes against the lightness of the backgrounds, the windows, those strong kind of sources, you know, it becomes more, the silhouette becomes a much more significant kind of image, really.
But we had to be careful as well because it was quite tongue-in-cheek at times, Musketeers. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't serious stuff. As I say, lots of fighting and horse riding and explosions and things. We didn't want to go too noir that people would turn off from it and not follow that kind of the enjoyable moment of the show, you know. It's
always that dilemma, isn't it? Want it darker.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, until it becomes too dark, and then everybody wants it lighter.
Yeah.
Had that a lot as well.
Which that happens. Sonia, you can talk to this. Sorry, I've not spoken to you, Sonia. I apologise, but
I'm listening to everybody and sorting out cats that have gone bonkers.
I mean, you could, although you've not worked with it, I don't know if
they want to join in.
Yeah, cool. Well, they're welcome to. Have you worked with any of this lot here at all?
Yes, I have. Simon, I'll put it the other way. Simon came and worked for me.
Yeah, okay.
I've worked
Didn't
for
you,
her.
Simon?
Yeah.
And we met many years ago in theatre, actually, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah, right in the beginning. Yeah.
And that's how I met him.
Right. Well, you can speak to this in terms of that relationship between a DP and a director, because how is it? And actually, it's interesting about that one about a director as well. How I mean, obviously, the decision making comes from it ideally would come from a director, but then how would do you often find that the triangle not breaks down, but how does that alter, and just the balance of that triangle? How can it vary?
I think, I mean, for me, because the art departments usually start first, they start before every other department. So you're kind of you're in the initial stages, and often you start making decisions about what it's going to look like, but you are very aware that the camera department, the cinematographer is going to be starting, and the costume designer is going to be starting. And sometimes in television, you know, the director may not come on as soon as you'd like them to. So it's kind of you're at the will of them when they turn up. They might be someone that's totally into what you've been doing and they love it, or they could start to sort of like rip it all apart and they want it to be something else. Maybe they're not so great at explaining their ideas. You know, not all directors are hugely visual. I've worked with a variety of different directors. Some are much better at the technical side of it. Some people are very into the script. Some are very into what the actors are doing. And some of them are into the whole thing as a visual process. So I think it's the luck of the draw with what you get. I mean, I'm lucky at the moment because I'm working with Reed Morano, and Reed Morano started off as a cinematographer. And of course, when she turns up, I just thought everything was just fantastic, because she could go to the crappiest location and she picks up her new iPhone that she's bought for herself and just holds it up and just looks at me when she can see my face is going, oh my God, I hate this, it's shit. And she knows we have to find something, because I'm on a show where we have hundreds of locations, and it's not a question of going, oh no, that's not quite right. Oh, that's not quite right. You're kind of almost forced into using something. And I'm sure everyone here can say that has happened to them, that you've kind of been shoved in a corner, and, you know, for whatever reason, a producer telling you, we can afford that, we can't afford that. You know, there's so many reasons. And you know, she just can hold it up. I look at the framing that she's done and I'm like, oh, that is, and so I'm very lucky with her, you know, and I like that. I don't know who's going to come because I'm on an episodic show, so I don't know who's going to come after her. I don't know who the cinematographer is going to be after Colin Watkins, who's on it with us at the moment. So you know, I don't know, but I'd say that the relationship for me between me and the camera department is massive, alongside. For me, and the paint finishes, I just can't get in, you know, paint finishes just got to be, because at the end of the day, you know, someone can come and switch a light on and you can have the most amazing paint finish, the most amazing set, and you get the wrong cinematographer and they fuck it all up and you're like, Jesus, what's that about? And but they could say the same about us. They could say that we do it, but that doesn't happen that often.
You notice on the art department, people were laughing at that.
It doesn't happen.
They're all Riley
nodding. Of the BSC. If they're a member of the BSC, they're good to go.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Noted.
Right, gloves off.
Yeah. But I think you're right. You're absolutely right. I think that and I don't know any. I mean, I guess there are people that would come in and would not gel, but we do have to interact and to collaborate, and
it is so important.
Yeah.
I've got my favorites. I mean, when we're on a job early, I'm like, are we going to have Mark Patton's coming? Do I get more? And there are people along the way that you meet that you kind of like them, don't you? And you hope that they fit for the show that you've been asked to do, or you want to, like me, I want a specific. When I did Taboo, I was delighted with Mark Patton because Mark Patton fit what I was doing, and I think that we'd all agree that the two of us, we have to get on. It's so important because if I can't go off in one direction and they go off in another direction, and then there's just nothing in the middle, and it's a nightmare. It's never going to work. And there is give and take, and I love the intelligence, and I love light, and I'm very aware of it, like Simon would be and Dave would be, we all would be, because we love it. And, that's why we do it, don't we? Look at the light behind me. I'm looking at that and I'm going, isn't that just so cool how there's little bits on the door there, and there's bits there on the side of the chandelier, and I look fabulous.
Mark in the background.
It's all been done by God.
Absolutely.
Sure, Mark's not
you haven't got Mark Patton hiding in the background.
I did actually call him up and I went, shit, do I? No, I didn't. No.
He put a frame up in front of the window.
He sent me a lighting package for Zoom. No.
That is a good question.
I think the point is that, we're all very reliant on each other, and hopefully, just coming back to what you said, hopefully a lot of those things, you have the opportunity to test, to look at together, find decisions that work for everybody.
And then you can bully the director, if you don't think it's working. You don't bully them, but you make suggestions, and you're like going, oh well, we think that and there is that, because you're not going to love. Not everybody has to love everyone. It's like at school, you didn't love every single person in your classroom. If you didn't get invited to every party, of course, that was another thing you'd have to deal with mentally. But I just think you get on, don't you? You try to get on, and you just have to. And you think about the project, don't you? It's about the end result. Who's the audience? What are you trying to do? And you all want to do something that's yours. You want to give something that's yours. You don't want to just do because someone says, oh, do it like that, and you repeat what someone's already done before. You want to give your own take on it. Isn't that why you're employed? So, that's how I feel.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to have an opinion. I'm most bored on set if I say to somebody, what do you think of that? And they're like, well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't mind. Or
I know I don't understand that.
It's why you want. It's in a way, I'd rather have somebody I can really disagree with than somebody who doesn't have a strong opinion. Because
how does everybody?
There's something creative happening.
Sorry, Jake. How's everybody coping? Or coping is maybe the wrong word. Thinking about, it's not a new system particularly, but I've done a lot of American shows recently, a lot of the more higher end, TV stuff, and we have the showrunner aspects of it, which has changed for me a little bit, because Musketeers didn't have a showrunner. It had a strong producer, and you have I think I worked with something like 8 or 9 different directors and 4 or 5 different DOPs through the run. How's everyone else feeling about the kind of central visual vision of it all, if you like, from a showrunner?
I think what's quite interesting, for me, about 4 years ago, I started doing episodic television in America and came across the showrunner really for the first time. And the relationship that the DP has in the States is somewhat different, I think, than what it is in the UK and Europe. But that showrunner thing, really, where directors come in and every 8 days is a new one, and really you find that your relationship with the production designer is so much stronger. But the ultimate thing is you go to the showrunner for everything, in terms of all the decisions. And in some ways that cuts through things a lot quicker. I don't know. I mean, it is a different process. I mean, Jake, you had some thoughts on that, I think, didn't you? Because you've got some...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult. I mean, look, it really depends on the showrunner.
Totally.
But in my experience, you know, I've had the experience of working a lot on one particular show over the sort of 5 years it's been running. And for me, I think it's great knowing that there's one or two people and basically what they say goes. That's the bottom line. They know what they want the show to be, and everything has to run through them. And you know, the people that have to come in and deal with that are really the directors, and the ones who are kind of pretty sanguine about it and understand how it works. You know, they understand that you've just that's what's happening, and there's no point fighting something that you can't win. You know, I've had some interesting situations where, because showrunners still want their directors to have creative thoughts and decisions, but they just don't want them to disagree with them, which is a sort of weird anomaly. So if you have a director who comes in and says, I don't mind where I shoot that scene, I'll do it in any of these options.
Not good.
Some showrunners don't like that because they're like, well, no, but pitch something. You know, it's an awkward relationship if you make it so. But I think the sort of the ultimate thing is that person's created the show, and you know, other than you and other key crew who have stayed on the show, there isn't really anybody who knows more about the show than you guys, because I mean, I've shot 27 episodes of Billions, and you know, I've definitely been there and seen more of it than almost anybody except for Brian and David and a few other people that have worked on the whole show. So, you know, I think what's interesting is that for me personally, as a DP, your investment in the show is much, much bigger, which is actually nice, because it becomes something that's not just, you just come in and out and you never really got that involved in it. But in fact, you know, you've become one of the key things that makes sure that it stays the way it's intended to. So, you know, you are in a weird situation where you might have to turn to a director and say, well, we don't really do that. If you decide that you really want to do that, we're probably going to come back tomorrow and do it again. So you know,
I mean, I think it has made the bond between designer and cinematographer a lot stronger, that system, I feel anyway.
No, I agree.
Florian, you've done some episodic TV. You've worked on The Terror, haven't you, amongst other things? How was it for you?
Well, we only did I only did block 1, and of course Jonathan McKinstry, the designer, was there before I came. But it was Edward Berger, the director, and we were quite a team. It was not just the showrunners. But of course, there is this interesting bit, is that certain decisions about the sets were, of course, made with Jonathan already thinking about block 2 and 3. So, for example, the ship had to be built in a certain way so you could tilt it in for later episodes. So you would have these, I think he had a tremendous responsibility in designing everything. I think though that, you know, I do enjoy also sometimes there is if a showrunner, and in this particular case, Sue and Dave were really very, very clever people that were very much looking for our creativity, but had, you know, we were all parking in the same garage, stylistically, what we liked, you know. And then I do like the system, you know, there's somebody else who's not that much, you know, it's not just 3, there's somebody from the outside that says, come on guys, you know, do it better or whatever. I do really enjoy that. I think it's a good
well, it's weird because I think, you know, it's different from, you know, in commercials, sometimes you have like that whole team of people who just drive everybody crazy because they're like, no, that's not orange enough. You know, I don't like that book there. You know, it's like, all right. But, you know, the showrunner, who often tends to be the person who's either created, written, or both the show that you're working on, actually really genuine, you know, they have to be pretty smart, you know, if they've got to that level. So, you know, in fact, that guidance is sometimes great because, you know, sometimes you do just want to say something, look, you know, do you think, is that right? Is that what you meant? And they'll go, yeah, that's exactly it.
I think somebody who sort of gives you a bandwidth to work within is very useful. You know, that's actually a very, you know, lovely restrictive environment sometimes, you know, for creativity to occur. So I've enjoyed relationship with showrunners or writers who have a say. I think it's very positive, just because they have a point of view which is useful to, keep you on track sometimes.
Well, it's all about parameters, isn't it? And I think it's either needs to come from a director, because you need to, otherwise you would build the world building you would do would just go on, there'd be no edges to it. There has to be some edges, and then a direction to travel in.
It's very similar to what a good producer will do as well. Yeah. Somebody who is producing a show properly, or really well, will actually give you that, that environment for you all to work within.
Yeah. You've just been away for is it 10 months, Simon? That's all on one set of shows, is it?
Yeah, one series called The Watch, BBC American, right. Terry Pratchett adaptation of the Discworld novels. So yes,
amazing.
We built sort of a whole world for it. Yeah, which we haven't really done here, but it was great to do there.
Wowzers! And you obviously, you've built the whole thing and been involved in the whole thing.
Yeah, incredible. So sort of very early stages, coming up with a look from the beginning, really, which corresponded to Simon Allen's, the particular showrunner there, had a very sort of certain bandwidth which he was envisaging, which I seemed to sort of land within, with some of the references that I came up with quite quickly. Just reading his script and his quite extensive pitch document, he did a little edit of the show that he had in mind based on different references from various films and things. So the parameters that he'd laid down were fairly clear, actually, and at that point we were allowed to sort of to run with it. And then as soon as the DOPs came on board, we were really able to get our teeth into set by set, really.
Were you working with different DPs, or is it because
three different directors, 3 different DPs? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and they had extensive prep. So shooting episodic television, we were constantly shooting and developing stuff as we were going and prepping. So it was pretty intense, but great, and some of that was literally just, someone was saying, well, we really have to do this here for the schedule. So, make the best of it, or we bought this location. So what can you do? Or this location's fallen apart. We need to turn this around. So there was a lot of quite distinctive design that was sort of original, but there was also a lot of adaptation going on with, this is what you've got to work with. So run with it. I mean, fortunately we had great locations, so everything was a great starting point. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So in talking about timing, and I mean, obviously the production design and the art department are always in first. Would it be better for DPs to be in earlier?
Yes.
Yes, definitely would want
there we go. Yeah. We can all, a show of hands there. We don't need that.
The number of times that I say to a producer, sorry,
go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say the number of times I say to a producer, or certainly line producers, is like, bring me in 3 weeks earlier, and they say, we can't afford it. That's how I save you 5 or 10 times what you will pay me by having the early conversations with directors, producers, and writers.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't ask for so much money, Mike. That's what it is.
I work for peanuts.
Just pay what they say, love. When they do their deal, they say, I don't have the money, and just go up right then. It's charity.
That's what they're always hoping you're going to say, you see.
Yeah, did you not know that it's just one big charity? Because that's, like in the art department, we're treated like, we're just like the poor. They're like, oh yeah, you're in the art department. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, you'll work all hours God sends. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, we're just in the art department. You just handed me over $15 million to piss away, but don't worry about it. I'm just in the art department.
Of course, that's not what the art department do. They spend it all very terribly wisely.
No, we just leave a cup of coffee all over their sets.
So we can all agree that we should that the collaboration should start, even if it's soft. I think that being in on locations together, I think is one that always gets me, because you often turn up and it's like, well, we're shooting here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Florian, Jake, how many times have you gone on a scout where things have been already set up, and you walk in and it's the 7th floor? And you go, could we not find the department on the ground floor? And it's like, the director.
There's a special location company. It's topfloorlocations.com. It's always the same.
300-foot condor outside.
Yeah, I do find. I mean, I always try to be, often non-consecutive. You say, just bring me in, you know, whatever, 3 weeks before my normal prep starts. And then, you know, you just take off a week, and sometimes it falls in place because you need to grade something, and then you can say, I go or something. But it's an interesting point you raised, Mike, because on Official Secrets, we did have the top floor apartment, the top floor newsroom. And I find that quite an interesting interaction as well, because I could see Simon's pain, because he had to dress, you know, Gavin is basically saying, yeah, everything in the newsroom will always be shot on the move, and I see these amazing Steadicam moves, and he just races through these empty spaces that we visited, you know, with this imaginary Steadicam, and you go like, how are we going to dress this? This is not going to work. I mean, we need like, I don't know, 200 tables. So we end up in a location, of course, that has tables in it, I remember this rightly, but which was up on the 6th floor. So, and then I think it was a really interesting process. You know, where do you go? Where do you put the money? Do we buy tables, or do we, you know, afford cranes? And I think that's an interesting way where we really need to work together, because it was better, of course, for the film to go up on the 6th floor, yeah, as much as I hated it. Because, of course, at that point in production, then everybody says, yeah, we know, we understand, we'll have 4 condos. That's not a problem. And you say it out loud with everybody around you, you know, everybody signing into this. And literally come a week later, you know, you see the gaffer arguing in the corner. And
they're having the conversation. The conversation is happening. The price is coming.
So we did lose out, but I do think that's an interesting, you know, way where we had to work together in a way. And you won.
This one for the designers then. I mean, I feel you do
down that end. Yeah. We just shot everything down that end where the crane, the one crane was in the end.
one left.
Take the mountain to it, of course. Here's one for the designers. Because I personally think that even if we don't come in, if we're not in early enough, you do actually a lot of our, you know, when you're sensitive to that, you're doing an awful lot of our work, because, you know, you're often it's great when you're sensitive to windows and light direction and what floor that locations are on and all sorts of things. So I'm always, it's the best relationships are when, you know, I get there and we're looking at a set and I get told this because, you know, you've got this much space to light it, because, you know, when the knowledge is shared, it's super appreciated.
I think it's important. Otherwise, you know, if you don't think about those things, and they can't light your set, and you can't see it. So,
well, it's to everyone's benefit, for sure.
Everyone's benefit. Yeah. Definitely.
To get a good location manager, that's the thing.
That's I was going to say, yeah. Location managers are key on these long-running dramas, or your quick turnarounds.
I mean, do you often work with location managers do you have location managers that you work with regularly? Are they almost part of your teams as designers?
In the Czech Republic, yes.
Right.
In the UK, it depends where it is. Really. It depends which country it's in, really.
Yeah, in England, it's, you know, it's quite, you'll get one that you really like and they did a great job for you, and then you try and get them again, and they are quite a rare breed because they're literally 2 years or 3 years booked in advance. You find out.
Right. The ones who have that magic ability to get in places that nobody else can get into and keep people happy.
Yeah,
it's a very, very special skill.
Yes, it is. And you don't want a lazy one that's just going to look in a whole list of things where everyone else has been, and you know every location because you've seen them. You're like, oh, really? Are we going in there again? And the thing is, once you find one where they're like rats up a drain van, they sniff around and you love it, and you just want to have them forever, and then they go off and do Harry Potter.
Or they become a producer.
Or Star Wars. Or no, they become a producer, that's right. Yeah, the production manager, line producer.
But, I mean, I've had a conversation, some years ago on a BBC show, Waking the Dead, and we were just filming in some second floor apartment in a precinct in northeast London. And, this was on the Scout, and I just said to the location manager, "You've screwed me again." He said, "Why?" and I said, "Look at the direction. Look where the sun is. Look, we're filming here for 3 days. How the fuck am I going to do this?" And actually, he said, "So what should I be looking for?" And so I sat down and I said, "Okay, this is what works for me. This is over the, you know, the period, what I can deal with, what I can control. But nobody had ever actually spoken to him about what we actually needed. He was given a brief by the script or the producer or whatever to go and find this location, but nobody had ever said to him, okay, when you go there, think about, you know, where the light's coming from, all these kinds of things. And so he was really appreciative of that, that nobody had taken the time before to explain to him that these are the considerations as I walk in that are going to be facing me. So it's partly communication and education, you know.
So many things are. Well, there's two things that we've sorted out. So we need, even if it's soft, that we need DPs in earlier, and secondary, we need a training program for location managers. This is great stuff.
I think the location department should become part of the art department.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never comes out of your budget then, basically.
No.
Never really understood that. That's, you know, I've been always really amazed, and I think I really want to wax lyrical at the state of art in the British art department, because I have so much love, you know, and working in Britain and working with British designers all over the world, because I think, truthfully, I think the British art department is one of the best. You know, in terms of thinking content, thinking character, you know, the attention to detail. But I've never understood why the location manager is not part of the art department. To me, because there is in other, you know, film cultures, it is considered part of the art department. You know, a designer would choose the location.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on. You have to set up that relationship right at the beginning when they start, you know, and it is because if you're doing a show that's location dependent and location heavy, yes, those are, otherwise as a designer, what are you doing? Just going in and painting a wall a different color and shoving in a sofa. It's like that part of it is such a huge part of it. And you need someone as a location manager that's artistic as well. You know, they need to have that artistry. They need to be able to see, does it work? Can I put that one with that one? You know, in the script, that one is next to that one. How does it relate? And if you get that person, that's what I said earlier, you just want to hang on to them, but there's not a huge amount. You know, there's some really great ones. They're brilliant, and they are always working. You know, they're brilliant, and we are very lucky. And you know, and they also have a way, don't they? They're brilliant at writing letters. They're so good at like knocking on people's doors and getting there. They've got really good scouts. You know, it's a whole big thing, and so you do need to manage it somewhat. And it isn't part of the arts part, I suppose, because they end up having to do lots of things like parking trucks up and doing unit bases and doing all those other things, you know, and that is also a huge part of their job. So they kind of, they sort of get put in this sort of facilities area, I guess, in a way.
Unit managing type thing, which is
you
know, the good ones are the creative ones with an eye and everything else we talked about.
I love the fact that Laurie has such a nice painting. Is that a painting or a photograph?
It's not. It's actually it's actually a photograph. I do apologise. My camera's done its thing, which is just awesome.
A very nice photo. It looks like a painting almost.
Thanks. I took it myself.
Very nice. I'm dying to ask Mr. Spragg about. I just want you to talk about Dempsey and Makepeace, please.
Why? Yeah, that's when you start.
Oh, I couldn't believe it when I looked at your IMDb thing, and I was like, "Holy shit, Dempsey and Makepeace!"
Yeah, I was about 3 at
that show.
I was about 3. I'll tell you some stories anyway, another time.
Yeah, you don't look old enough. I was like, Jesus, he must have been an assistant. He must have been very young.
Well, that's what I literally that I did the very first film of London's Burning and the Dempsey and Makepeace at the time. And that's what I was saying about Gary Hims. I mean, look at Gary now. Gary was basically, he worked as a prop man in the studio at London Weekend, and he said, I really want to go out and be a grip, you know, and everybody said he can't be a grip. And he, you know, pushed his way out and got out on those shows and, you know, to see where he is now.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I had to throw that.
We've all got to start somewhere.
Absolutely. That's very true. If we could just get into, actually, what I haven't done is looked at any questions. We haven't got any questions in the Q&A box. Were there any questions that you had, Sonia, that you wanted to, because you came up with a lovely list of stuff that you kind of...
Yeah, I just wanted to ask all the BSC members, if you hadn't have gone into the camera department, if you could say now, you have to say now, you can't go away and think about it. Which department would you actually like to secretly be in the film industry or television industry?
Editing.
Yeah, editing.
Editing's very good.
Editing's the place.
I went to film school, same one as Seamus, basically, and Seamus was a year below me. And I remember in the first year we had to do all the disciplines basically, and the editing department was in the basement in just off Regent Street, and it was this tiny little series of rooms. And I just thought, do I want to spend my life in a small dark room looking at what everybody else goes around the world and films? No,
that's the problem.
I mean, but yeah, you're still playing with pictures. I mean, so it would be a second choice, yes.
Yeah.
And what about you three? What would your alternative job be?
Well, I'd like to be one penny behind Neil Corbould, if you're watching, Neil. You're doing special effects, and I'd like to have 5 Oscars and 55 BAFTAs, or however many he's got. Visual effects, special effects in particular, I'm absolutely fascinated. I think I like the engineering. I love the engineering side, you know, when they build those huge structures, and I just find it amazing. And when you watch a car stunt and how they built the rigs and how they can flip a car and they can make it do it, it's like ballet, but they do it with huge bits of metal. And I don't know, I've always loved that part of it. I love that. I just think it's amazing what they do. I think they're an amazing group of people, and especially when you get to blow up a building.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen that often. Yeah, and I want to be I want to be a stunt, or I always thought I wanted to be a stunt arranger. I always fancied something like that, you know, a bit
It's
dangerous.
still time.
Yeah, I'm a bit past it now. I think I'm too old. I think I've worried too much about breaking things, you know, like my hip. Don't you break your hips when you get to my age? I think you get problems like that, and then you go and have replacement stuff. I was like, no.
Simon, what would you choose to do if you would do anything else?
I really like building stuff, so I think construction or a special effects construction, yeah, I think is great. Just building sets is what I really enjoy. That's the best part of it. I mean, the whole process.
You like making big stuff.
Yes, yeah, like big, yeah.
Big stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything else, to be honest. I love what I do, and I don't want to. Is that not allowed, that answer? I think similar construction. Actually, I love that idea of produce. You know, we're all on a path to produce something, so we're all heading towards an end point. You know, so I love that idea of production and doing something physical, and that doesn't necessarily have to last very long.
Yeah,
I love that idea of problem solving and it being, you know, it's got to be fast and creative, and so that kind of construction is something that
I think I'm the same as Simon, I think, but I think I would have quite liked, just maybe not too late, to specialize in plastering and plaster making, carving, sculpting.
That would be really interesting.
Because it just looks, on every show that I do, and I go into the plaster shop and I can spend hours there just watching guys make things. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it looks very relaxing. I'm sure it's not when you're actually doing it, but it looks very relaxing to process.
The smell's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
Smell.
So you never know.
Well, there's still, well, anything could happen after this, after the lockdown. Anything could happen. Actually, I wanted to ask you, actually, Dave, about what you were. Well, just a thing about foreign crews. I mean, you said that Musketeers was shot in the Czech Republic. How was that? Well, how is that for everybody? Everyone's travelled. I mean, Simon, you just talked about being in South Africa. How is it working with you? Can. I don't know if do you ever get to take people with you, whether you take your supervising art directors on the set decks with you?
I did at the beginning. I've worked Simon worked in South Africa, all over Malta, France, America, everything. But I've done a lot of work in the Czech Republic. I think at least five years worth of work over there. So I have got a team there now that I use all the time who are absolutely brilliant. So I bring less and less people out to work with me. I do like to try and get my set decorator from Scotland. Like he's a key person in my department as a designer. Just the thought process. But once you've worked in a place for long enough and you know the people, the language barrier is not an issue at all. Visual is a international language, and you draw something, they understand it. But yeah, I'm very impressed with the people in Prague. They're incredibly skilled. I mean, I'm sure they're all over the world, but they're particularly.
Well, that's it. That's it. He's finding those gems, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of people who just who get it. And if you've had good experiences, then obviously in Prague, how was it for you in South Africa, Simon?
Yeah, same.
Did you take anyone with you?
No, I didn't. I had the opportunity to take a key member, but in the end, I went over and met the people there. They'd all worked together, and I figured it was easier for me sort of slotting into their way of working, which actually felt very familiar. I mean, it was a sort of combination of American and British systems that they work in there. But they were all great, and it worked really well. I was really well looked after. They were incredible. I mean, I could have taken an art director with me, but I think in the end the art directors over there were so strong, and the set deck department was incredible too. And they rely on a lot of local knowledge, and they're constantly making everything, because obviously, like here we hire a lot of stuff, and on a bigger film we'd make it, of course, but there they just, we'll just make it, and so had amazing, huge crews. Yeah.
Well, I guess then that's going to be budget dependent as well, isn't it? So it's, but like locations, you need people that, especially for art department, you need to be able to source stuff locally as well. So even if it's down to timber and paint and.
Yeah, so it makes sense to have the local the local knowledge is great. And I think if you're able to communicate your ideas clearly enough, like when you're having conversations with the DP or the director or the showrunner, same with your department, that's what it's all about really. And it's those moments that you have those conversations that Jake's talking about, where where you want to get to the nitty gritty of things, but it is necessarily about really expressing yourself very clearly. That's where we go to so much trouble with all our drawings and plans and organization. And that layer of the art department is really crucial, and hopefully is benefit to the other departments as well, especially to the lighting department and gaffers, for example, benefit from all that level of sort of paperwork that we do. So that investigating a project, at the sort of basic documentation level is really important to me, just to communicate exactly, what's in mind. It gives you a chance for things to change or not change, or, and really for me also just to make sure I thought about everything well enough. It's very rare I arrive on set now and go, oh, I haven't really thought about this enough now, because you want to make sure that never happens. You want to
that is one of the things about foreign film. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but you do have to, not that you're not organized anyway, you have to be that extra little bit organized when you're away, I think, just to avoid those what do they call it, the communication misinterpretations.
Yeah, because everybody's kind of go, yes, they understand. And then sometimes when I worked in Holland, I noticed, oh, you didn't really understand quite what I was saying. You were just being really nice about it. You have to kind of protect yourself back against that a little bit. But but it's...
You come across language barriers, so you have to...
Yeah, and cultural barriers as well.
Yes, culture barriers.
Because I did a shoot out in Thailand and then another one in Malaysia. And then you realize culturally there are things that are very different, where people don't want to say no to you. And so it's always reading, when you ask, have you done this? Yes, but they haven't, but they don't want to say so. And it's like, please tell me that you haven't done it, then I can make a decision. So it's the whole cultural thing as well as the language.
Here's a question coming from the DP's end of it, and I just think whether it's interesting for design. It's about a discussion about the camera format and the lenses. Does that where does that fit in with you in your partnerships? And do you ever think about what it's going to be, designers? And do you ever sort of consider that things like aspects like depth of field, how that's useful for design, because how much where that when that decision gets made. And is that on purpose? How does cameras and lenses, how does that fit in with both your work practices together? Dave.
Okay. I think it's very important, very, very important, particularly on period stuff or stuff that you're trying to, put your stamp of a style that yourself, the DOP director, that everybody wants on it. Because unfortunately, it happened to me once where that I wasn't involved in that conversation to do with the lots and how it was going to, what the post-production aspects of it were going to be. And when it came out and I saw the colors that I'd been choosing on camera and all of my tests that I've been doing on camera tests, when I saw the final product, I was like, oh my God, that's not what I intended. But, they'd made the decision after the shoot of what we were going to do. and the lot, and changed it all in post, and it really affected a lot of my design. So now it's one of my first conversations I have. You know, what are we doing? What are we doing at the start here? And I do camera tests. I do camera tests on everything I possibly can: fabrics, paint colors, surfaces, textures. Trying to get that information to see how it's going to work before we start doing things. And I think DOPs seem to appreciate that level of commitment at the start, so you can establish what the look's going to be. You know,
but it's vital, because what you don't want to do is get on set, turn some lights on, and go, "Oh, that entire wall's really shiny," and you can't make it work.
I just make sure that they have windbags on every single set, so there's none of that dodgy lighting that goes on.
Lifting it up.
Because if there's a ceiling piece on, they get, I've come across that a few times where all the ceiling pieces were on and then suddenly they weren't on anymore. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing how much light has come from that candle.
It'll come from somewhere. It's coming from the same place.
When the moon comes out, it's a full moon, isn't it? Every night. It's a full moon.
Absolutely.
Every night it's a full moon.
That discussion about lenses and aspect ratios is really good to key into very early on, I think, because it does affect what you do. Definitely aspect ratio, but I'm always very keen to find out if we're on anamorphic or spherical, you know, and what sort of depth of field we might be using, how much light we're pumping into sets.
That's especially interesting, I think, for Official Secrets, because it was so composed and framed and held for so much of it. It's actually the way that for instance, Catherine's house interiors felt like framed. You know, they were composed not just by camera, but obviously by design as well. Do you have, Jake? You obviously was talking about Bandersnatch, going back to that, and about the different formats, and then the idea of whether the lighting and the mix of lighting and the design, and then the grade for the flashback stuff. I mean, was that decided way up front? Because obviously, Dave was saying it had an effect on the design.
No, I mean, not really. You know, David, the director, has a long relationship with Jean-Clément Sauret, who graded that, who, you know, is an absolutely fantastic colorist at MPC. And I mean, I did attend some of the sessions doing that. You know, he really looks to all his collaborators to go really extreme and make it interesting. So, you know, he just would say to Jean-Clément, just, you know, keep going, push it further, see when he thought it, you know, because he got too far and then edge back a bit. But, you know, that hadn't been particularly nailed down up front at all, actually, on that. And it was partly, you know, it was interesting, you know, large format digital cameras, they're so sharp, and, you know, you sort of get used to that look quite quickly. And in Bandersnatch, because it cuts pretty aggressively between some of that stuff, when you actually see 35mm, you know, neg next to it, I mean, it's like, ugh, wow, that's grainy. You know, it wasn't doing anything to particularly make it like super grainy. It's just you're looking at a particular type of image, and then when you juxtapose it with something that you used to think was really, really sharp, it's like, that's not very sharp, actually. But I just think, you know, it was a question of texture mainly. So, you know, we were always pushing things pretty hard, and I think that was brought out very much in the telecine as well. And, you know, because it was actually a telecine, there was some film, and the different textures, we weren't trying to hide or blend, or, you know, in fact, quite the opposite.
How does that feel for everybody, actually, about the authoring of a piece? And does it feel like sometimes then it's taken out of your hands, you know, once it gets past production, obviously, then it goes into the edit, and then the choices that are made there, and then the choices that happen in post? I mean, does it feel, and I guess this brings in VFX as well, and how much control that you continue to have on that. How does that relationship feel in terms of feeling like you maintain authorship on a piece, or like all of us, are we just providing directors with stuff, and then once it's sort of handed over,
working together? I mean, I think the authorship thing, you know, you kind of got to let it go at a point, because, you know, if you really feel that strongly, you should be a director. I mean, you know, like, you are there working with and for other people, and hopefully you've all agreed a common goal that you're all going to make the decisions to achieve. So, I mean, you know, we had some pretty complex visual effects in Bandersnatch, and I've just such admiration for Glassworks, who, fantastic artists, fantastic technicians, and really did everything they could to make it, shootable in the parameters that we had on that particular job, but also, brought very unique and interesting ideas with them, which I think you're always hoping for.
There's always that combination, isn't there, of pinning things down, but then letting it evolve as well at the same time. It's one of the nice things about obviously being a production designer or a DP is all the relationships you have with all the members of the crew and how that kind of benefits the final product. That evolution is crucial. And sort of
I think it's also key now, that relationship, the DP relationship, the designer relationship, and now the VFX supervisors, because so much of what we do is only a part of what the final image is. And so there are elements that design bring. There's obviously the way it's shot, but the way it then integrates into the final thing, it's another big area of discussion that needs to be had up front, where all of these things are talked about.
It's
so
great. Increasingly, VFX supervisors are being brought on earlier now, and those conversations all happen sort of during.
We had a VFX come on very early on the last project I did, and we sat together and did visuals and agreed everything really style-wise, what it was going to look like at the end. What came out was brilliant. It's really good. It's about trust, really. Like Jake said, it's about trusting people.
Well, and the melting pot, of course, like you say, is that everybody, it's not just, although it's often led by a director or a showrunner, but it's about letting all of those ideas come together.
Also, I think you don't want people to just be bringing up obstructions, and in the old days when VFX was such a sort of less advanced art than it is now, it was like anytime you move the camera, it was like, oh no, that's a problem. And, now we all know it's not a problem so long as you got the time and the person power to hand rotoscope things that need to be hand rotoscoped, or key things if you didn't put a blue or green screen in. It's all doable, and it doesn't have to be cripplingly expensive, but everyone has to agree that stuff up front. And again, if you're going to have all those conversations before you're standing there on set going, oh, actually, you know what, that's all in frame, and what are you going to put there? Or you have somebody going, oh, it's okay, I'll put some texture up there later, and then you see the final thing, it's like, oh, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Or you could just get the art department to build it.
Or that.
That would be a fix.
Or that.
I think it's a really interesting question, because I personally, I feel like everybody here, that you're part of a crew, a team, and I sometimes I think within shooting, there's also this element of setting lights up live. I sometimes think there's a parallel to being an actor almost, because we, as DOPs, we kind of perform live, and you do something on the day, and then, you have to walk away, and, you might be able to, help it a little bit later. It's a very immediate thing that, but I think there's one thing that sometimes makes me think a bit is, when I started out, the first things I shot, I remember I worked with a designer called Maurice Kane, who I learned tremendous amounts from. I mean, he was the most impressive man. And I remember we shot a show about the life of Saddam Hussein, and he had built this gigantic set. And it was not a set where, you have these sets where people walk on and they take their phones, or back then there were no phones, but say that take the camera out, say what an amazing set. And it didn't feel like that at all. It was actually quite bare. But once we were shooting it, I was realizing everything the story needs is in the right place. You could almost like stand there with your bare eyes and you wouldn't, see it. But when you shot it, you just realize how much thinking he had put into the design of the space. And I think there's often this sensation of immediacy that, as much as we are a team, I think sometimes the respect for the people that actually do the creative thought is kind of petering away a bit, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody says something, about a monitor, you see the images immediately, and everybody says, oh, isn't that a bit dark in the corner, or, or everybody has painted a room, and then hence he thinks he's a designer. I don't know. There was this, I recently on the BSC, the WhatsApp thing, somebody posted a picture of this amazing Technicolor 3-step 3-strip camera as big as a car with an operator next to it, you know, in the full, you know, in the jacket and, you know, with a tie and everything. I know this is all gone long, but I sometimes think there should be, I don't know, I try to remind myself that within the way we communicate with each other, that you really, you know, creativity is such a fragile thing. You know, and if somebody has an idea, that you have to cherish it, you know, and it's so easy. Oh no, that doesn't work. And then you don't, do you know what I mean? Am I just getting carried away?
Well, it's real functional creativity, doesn't it? I mean, we have to work at real practical levels and usually at quite high speed and under lots of pressure. How does that affect everybody here, Simon?
Well, you're constantly trying to balance those practicalities, you know, the budget and getting it shot in time or finished in time. So the schedule is always hanging over you, you know, and it invariably it starts with, you know, the shows always start with high expectations and dreams. They don't want you to rein yourself back too much, but obviously there's a moment which you do need to engage with just getting through it all. So, and also, you know, delivering a world that's practical for the, you know, for the film crew to work in, you know, just that basis as well is you know, it's really important. So you're constantly doing a lot of different things at the same time, especially when you're prepping and shooting at the same time, or, you know, having to budget as well. There's, you know, as just come up with concepts and designs, you know, there's a lot going on. You find yourself actually, once you start filming, sort of a little bit trying to take that all on board and not worrying the DP with it too much, or the director, and, you know, you're shouldering quite a lot of that just to sort of keep the wheels on the bus going. So that's obviously, that's, you know, one of the greater challenges naturally. And I think as you get more experience, you're able to deal with that with less fear and still keep the imagination and the dream alive, as it were. So, you know, you find yourself kind of having these two things going on. You know, oh no, we can't do that. Oh no, but we really should. You know, and I think again, it's about communicating what it is that you want to do and why, within certain bandwidths and parameters, and you know, you keep
and then defending some of those ideas, because the ideas can get watered down by budget, and then it's like, well, it just takes too long to do, and it's like, well, actually, no, this is it's a key bit of the narrative. It shouldn't be, and it still has to be led by that rather than budget.
So you need to sell it. You have to sell it.
You have to sell it.
An idea. If you're good at sales, you'll go very far.
You've got to.
That's what it is. It's the pitch. You know, you've got to pitch it.
You know,
and especially when you get the camera department coming and they want 50 lights and you've only got one. You're like, sorry, there's only one. You can pay for some though. How about that one? We haven't
okay.
About shall we get the camera department to pay for some lights? How about that one?
And the bulbs.
I'm sure there's loads of people watching that from the art department going, oh yes, goody, let's talk about that.
Well, practicals, you know, we could talk about practicals.
Yeah, but we always get told, I always get told, oh no, the camera, they don't have a budget. It's like, oh, sorry?
Well, the lighting department do, the camera department.
Yeah, but the lighting department, and then so you go and you're like,
thousands of bulbs sitting around in lockups.
How much is it? Come on, tell us.
But I do personally, I always envy, I don't know how you guys feel about it, you know, I think, you know, that, and I mean, I personally live in a budget-free world. I'm getting told by the line producer, yes or no. I don't really know what the budget of the camera department is.
Exactly.
I mean, and I've always found the liberty also of the production designer to be able to pace himself or herself within the given budget, as far as I see it,
It just makes it difficult because, you know, I just recently worked on something and there was a very specific bulb that the cinematographer wanted, and he didn't just want one. He needed 350 of them. And the thing is, there was that whole batting around, who pays for that? Do I pay for that? Do they pay for that? Well, you can't see it. It's behind a casing. You can't see it. And the fitting actually came with its own thing, but obviously it wasn't what he wanted. So there is always that conversation. And the thing is, I get why he wanted it because it made it look really cool. But then there's that thing like, well, where's that? How does that work? Who's making that decision? And then you get told by production, oh, well, you have to find it out of your budget. And those little things sometimes can make the relationship between the art department and the camera department a little bit tetchy, because you get a bit like, ooh, and, you know, and you try to sort it out, of course, because you know that they need it and you try to help them. And, you know, and then the weird thing is there's all this batting that goes on, and then suddenly production will come and go, oh, it's fine. Yeah, don't worry, we've got it covered. Why didn't you say that at the beginning? But it's a game, isn't it? It's that's why you've got to be good at sales. You know, it's a game you're playing with them.
We've got a question in the Q&A box. I'm just going to do this one. It's a good one for everybody, really. It's experiences, good and bad, with photographic backings and translights and backing cloths. I think that's an interesting one that we could all talk about a little bit. What are people's experiences and interactions? I mean, how does that work in terms of focus and you know, and are paintings better or more expensive, or what's people's experiences with those?
It was very interesting you should ask that question, because I was on the phone with today on a Zoom with Sarah, who works for Roscoe, and we were talking about backings.
The dreaded blur level question.
I was talking about James Gemmell, who's a brilliant scenic painter. I was talking about, we're also about blue screens, and you know, if you go on a stage, you know, how much do you like a blue screen, or would you rather have a painted backing? Would you rather have a translight? What would you? How do you feel about it? Because obviously, you know, for varying reasons, if I'm doing something, I'd rather have a painted backing because it's much better for what I'm doing. But then for other things, you want to have a blue screen backing. But then there's a sort of problem, because, you know, you need that 7 meters distance away and all that thing that goes on. And then there's the cost. And then there's the thing about, do you want LED screens? Should we go into that whole world? You know, because there's all of that too.
I think it is interesting. I think the thing I did last summer, we had a combination of all of them, all of those things, because we needed times of day it was actually, luckily, it was a ground floor bedroom, but it had big windows. We ended up, because I couldn't control, you know, it was such a major number to control where the sun was, you know, it obviously moved. But what we ended up doing was just tenting the whole, it is 2 aspects of the room. And I needed day and night, and we didn't want it to always be a green screen job whenever you looked at the windows. So we had a version of painted, and we could drop a blue for, you know, so we could do all the times of day. So I think it's always, generally it's a combination of things, but I guess it just depends on what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, Dave, do you want to go first?
I was going to say, it depends on what you're up to, but it also depends on budget as well. You know, I've been lucky enough on some jobs to have the translight, the day and night translights with the LEDs in them, which if you get them right, they're fantastic. Really, really good. But, you know, other jobs, well, actually painting backdrops these days is probably more expensive because there's not that many people out there that can do it well anymore, which is a bit sad. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends on budget as well, which you can afford.
I think it is difficult because you tend to get asked a lot of questions that are basically quite hard to answer. So for instance, on Billions, when we moved from season 2 to 3, we left a real location. There was a whole floor of an office, fantastic place, you know, with brilliant views out the windows. But obviously you were totally daylight dependent. So that was kind of a pain in the ass after a while to deciding, right, we're going to build a huge, you know, 2-story set. And obviously the first thing that happens is, okay, if you want to take a picture for a translight, you can't optimize the horizon line for 2 stories. It's physically impossible. So you're already making a compromise because somehow, you know, hopefully the background looks like it's far enough away that you don't really notice. But I mean, you know, hopefully not a problem you're going to come across too often. But so if you have a translate that needs to cover 2 stories, it's always going to look wrong somehow because
from somewhere
some parallax should shift when you go up and down, and it doesn't. So in this case, you know, it's a New York skyline. It's kind of far enough away, so it's sort of okay. In relation to the question this person actually asked, in that situation, Roscoe were making it, and in fact, they have photographers who will go and put together the plates, and you and the director and the designer and the showrunners will all agree a thing, because this was a 200-foot long translate. But then they're going to, you know, they have a scale of sharpness. I think it's like 0 to 10. And, you know, obviously to print out the translate costs $60,000. So you get one go at it. And you say, right, can you provide a sample just of some of the different sharpness levels? And it'll be a piece of cloth that's about 12 foot by 3 foot. So, you know, with the best will in the world, it's quite difficult to go, that'll look right when it's 2,000 times larger. But you know, everyone has to look at it and make an educated guess, which is actually what you're doing. In my experience, because you know, ultimately there's the factors of how far away is it, how sharp is it, how in focus is it going to be based on your format, and you tend to not know all the answers to all those questions at the moment. Some of those decisions are being made, so you kind of just got to hope for the best. But it's very difficult. I mean, you know, when they're good and when it looks right, it's great. I mean, interestingly, on Bandersnatch, so we had a translite for the exterior view out of Trellick Tower, the Trellick Tower set, which was quite a simple one, you know, a very distant skyline. But again, you know, when you stretch these translights the first time, they take a while to settle down and all the kinks to come out. And, you know, we'd factored that in to the time when it was going to be delivered and it was all going to be fine. And then, you know, of course, oh, where is it? Oh, no, it's coming tomorrow. Well, that would be too late. Well, that's when it's coming. It's late. So, you know, you just have to deal with it. But I think it is a, you know, I think you are often put in a very difficult position where someone's saying, is that going to be right? And you're kind of like, I think so. Looks right.
They are tricky. Yeah, I don't think I've got a single photographic backlight backcloth done properly yet. You know, that there's an element that's too big, or as you say, the perspective is wrong. They're really hard. I mean, I like a painted backcloth just because obviously it sort of is a bit more forgiving, and you know, and also it benefits that sense of fall off that you get with depth of field, which I really like out the windows. But obviously, if you're shooting in a massive kind of office set with a big view of London or New York, then you're not going to get away with that.
Just not going to have the reality.
Be horses for courses, really. But obviously you need stuff outside the windows. But then sometimes, you know, we get away without it as well. You know, just hang a white out there, you know, depending how much, you know.
Or it's just a tonal difference where you've got a horizon, you know, depends if you've got window coverings. Yeah.
So you know, there's you know, sometimes there's too much fear about what you need to put out there, I guess. But
well, that is the thing where all, you know, nets and blinds and all that stuff really helps. And so another discussion was having design about, you know, what window treatments are you going to have, how much do you want to put down, you know.
Yeah, I end up putting nets, curtains, and the blind on my on all windows on the set. So you've just got, you know, you can do that, or that, or that.
I love it.
Keep you happy.
It doesn't look like a set at all, then, Simon.
No, it's just like sort of walking to John Lewis drape department.
I watched the other day, and they'd obviously decided that they just didn't want to do anything out of the windows at all. So they just stuck frost on every single window. So it was just, and even when they opened the door, they just like scooted in and scooted out. And it was, and I just thought, whoa, you just really didn't know what they obviously were like, oh no, can't handle it. No, let's just make it all go away. Yeah. But the thing is that then makes it look like you're in a weird set because there's no depth whatsoever. You know,
it's just the light box. It looks terrible.
Yeah. And
Mike, what's your experience with translights recently?
I did a show recently, a thing called Bluff City Law, which is a legal drama. So we had, you know, 20 minutes of the hour in a courtroom each time. So we had, you know, the backing cloth that was put up there constantly. We were changing things, bringing in blinds, spraying water on the windows, you know, a kind of like a sort of a paste on the windows so that you could still see something. And I don't think in the entire 10 episodes we ever quite got it right. Some techniques were better than others, but it's never an ideal situation. You know, the best thing is to have the real world out there, but that's not always practical. So.
I just recently watched that. I'm sure some of you have that. You know, that document behind the scenes of the Mandalorian. You know, where they've gone full circle with the LED. I mean, that is quite impressive, I have to say.
That was amazing.
That would be. I'm wondering if that is something that, if it gets more accessible financially, that we'll find ourselves.
I mean, it's cripplingly expensive at the moment.
It's very, very expensive.
we used it on an American show. For all the all the live projection, side projection, top projection on vehicles. Yeah. And it worked fantastically, but it was really expensive. Really expensive.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a godsend in that sense because it's not only what you're looking at, but it's often it can be used as a light source as well.
Yeah, it did.
So it's an interactive, so it's got all the flickering and it's got all the movement plus reflections. So it's pretty fancy stuff, but even on a small scale, if you just want to do some car process work, just so we don't have to go on a low loader, because I'll never go on a low loader again, I'll be happy. But
that's all we
yeah,
did. A lot of money.
Yeah,
they look great though.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we've been going for an hour and a half, and we did have lots of pictures to look at. But I honestly think that that's been so interesting, and I appreciate all of your time. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me, Dave Arrowsmith, Sonia Klaus, and and Simon Rogers. Sorry, I forgot you messed up in all my windows here. Jay Polonsky and Florian Hoffmeister and Mike Spragg. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's not been too awful for you. It's been brilliant. Thank you. Really informative and just lovely to see all your faces. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks, Laurie. Great.
No worries. Thank you. Take care. See you soon.
All right.
You can all press your button.